gunshot. But I pray to God, please, take me, leave my son, but it's too late.
KSU 710, that's Luisa Seau, the mother of NFL great, former All-Pro linebacker, future Hall of Famer Junior Seau, who died of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound in San Diego yesterday. He was only 43, and the latest in a disturbing string of former football players who've taken their own lives. ABC's Jim Ryan following this story for us this morning. Jim, and there are many questioning whether this, again, is linked to football-caused brain injuries.
Perhaps, yes. Nobody thinks that the death of Junior Seau, the 43-year-old former NFL star, is anything but a suicide. A gunshot wound to the chest. Unusual placement of that wound, I think. Generally, when people kill themselves with a gun, it's done with a shot to the head, this time to the chest. And people say that that may be telling. Was Seau trying to preserve his own brain for future study? It all goes back to, as you mentioned there, Paul, the possibility that concussions, that brain injury might have led to depression. The depression might have led to the suicide. There have been lawsuits filed, although Seau was not a part of the lawsuits. Lawsuits filed by former players making that precise claim against the NFL.
There are indications this morning that there was zero warning about the possibility of this with Seau.
You're right. There was no note left behind. There were text messages sent by Seau to his former wife and to his 3 children. Individual text messages that said simply, "I love you." That's the last anybody heard from Junior Seau. His body then discovered a short time later in his home in California.
Meantime, the NFL, there's nothing but bad news here. The NFL has come down hard on those players that were involved in the bounty program.
Most of the players, Scott. Interestingly, the NFL wants to send a message to players that they can face as strong a sanction as coaches and owners if there are bounties that are offered up and paid for players to go out and injure their opponents on the field. We've heard about bounties that were paid of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases to players who went out there specifically with the intention of taking out one of their opponents. Well, all but 4 of the 27 current or former Saints that had been linked to this, the New Orleans Saints cash for hits bounty system, are going to face no sanction at all. But those 4 face serious suspensions from the game.
People are looking now, back a year ago, Chicago Bears safety Dave Duerson killed himself with a gunshot wound to his chest. This business of brain injury, concussions, and how it impacts these guys later in life, we know a little bit, but not a lot about the connection there, right?
You're right, and it's something that hasn't received a lot of study, that at least not until recently people hadn't really thought about. I think that players and fans even assumed that concussion and brain injury was just a part of the game. Then you start seeing some of the older players, those who have retired and having major problems, mental issues and physical problems as well, not only in football but in boxing. Look at poor Muhammad Ali. But it goes back even beyond that. Maybe the NCAA, say some people, should be looking at this as well. Even high school athletes are taking hard hits on the field and perhaps paying the price later on in life.
One thing we know from neurologists, if you have one concussion, you're likely to have more.
Exactly, and they become progressively more damaging to the physical component in the brain, and then that can lead to psychological problems down the road, according to medical experts here. But these players who've joined in this lawsuit, by the way, Seau was not one of them, say that the NFL knew something about this, but wasn't telling players that the NFL just wasn't upfront about that information.
We say that there was no indication Seau may have been troubled, and yet there was an incident in which he drove his car off a cliff. Some suspect that now, looking back, that may have been a suicide attempt.
You're right. Was that an early indicator? It was October of 2010. Seau survived this plunge, 100 feet. His sport utility vehicle went over the side of a cliff. The vehicle was destroyed, but Seau was okay eventually. He said that he had fallen asleep at the wheel, that it was completely accidental. But now looking back at it, I think people are saying maybe that was an earlier attempt that was unsuccessful. The one yesterday, of course, was successful.
We're going to be hearing much more on this subject. ABC's Jim Ryan. Jim, thank you very much.
Thanks.